Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
Egbert was different from his family. He got angry easily and sometimes didn't listen to others. He worked with his dad, but it wasn't easy because he often annoyed him. But Egbert loved his mom a lot, and she helped him stay focused on his work. One day, Egbert surprised his sister Ingrid by asking her to go for tea at a cafe. He had promised this a long time ago, but Ingrid thought he had forgotten. She was very happy when he showed up to take her out. They went to a nice cafe with beautiful decorations and music. Ingrid enjoyed eating cakes and listening to the music. She felt grown up being out with her brother alone. Egbert was very kind that day. He bought Ingrid lots of cakes and even chocolates and candy. He let her pick a present from a shop, and she chose a pretty bag. Ingrid was so grateful to her brother. She told him he was a great brother, and he replied mysteriously, making her wonder what he meant. Ingrid mentioned their outing at dinner, but it caused a big reaction. Her dad and brother looked upset, and Egbert got angry. Ingrid didn't understand why. When she tried to ask about it later, everyone avoided the topic. It was clear there was a big argument between Egbert and his dad. Mr. Saxon hinted at things that made Egbert leave the room. Mrs. Saxon looked worried, and Quinread changed the subject when Ingrid asked her about it. It was tense at home, like there could be a fight any moment. Only their mom kept things calm. Athelstane was upset too. He needed more books for school, but his dad said they couldn't afford them. Athelstane was frustrated because he needed the books to do well in school. He complained to Ingrid about how difficult his dad was. Quinread also felt sad because they used to have an easier life before they were poor. Quinread and Ingrid talked about how they could help Athelstane. They didn't want to ask friends for money, so they wondered how they could earn it themselves. Ingrid felt sad, but had some wild ideas about earning money. She thought about being a crossing sweeper or an actress like Charlie Chaplin, but those seemed too difficult for her. Then, on Saturday afternoon, she had a big idea. She thought about selling her dog, Derry. Derry was a fox terrier she got from her cousin as a birthday present. He was smart, but sometimes made a mess by jumping on chairs. Ingrid never thought about Derry's value until Mr. Hardcastle noticed him. Mr. Hardcastle was their neighbor, and they didn't talk much after their dog Sam got hurt in an accident. But when Athelstane helped Sam, Mr. Hardcastle became friendly. He mentioned that Derry could be worth money to a dog fancier. Ingrid hated the idea of selling Derry, but she remembered her mom saying they needed to stick together as a family, even if they didn't have much money. So, Ingrid decided to sell Derry to help Athelstane buy his medical books. She put on her hat, picked up Derry, and went to Mr. Hardcastle's house. She found him reading by the fireplace and politely asked if he knew anyone who wanted to buy a prize fox terrier. "I have his papers here," she said, "and he's really a good little dog. If you know someone interested, please let me know." Mr. Hardcastle seemed surprised. He thought for a moment, then said, There was a vet in Grovesbury who wanted one, but he just bought one. You could try ads in the bazaar. He seems like a smart little guy. Why do you want to sell him? Is he causing trouble? No, Ingrid said, turning even redder. It's not that. I don't want to sell him, but I need to. Before she could finish, tears filled her eyes, and she started crying quietly. Mr. Hardcastle was alarmed and tried to comfort her. There, don't cry. Tell me what's wrong. But you're not a doctor, Ingrid exclaimed. No, but my son was studying medicine at Berkshire. He had just passed his intermediate M.B. when he was called up. I've got all his books. He won't need them anymore. He was flying over the German lines, and his plane crashed. One comfort, he was killed instantly. He had always hoped he'd never be taken prisoner. I think he'd have liked his books to be put to some use. I'll find them and send them to your brother, along with the microscope and anything else I can find. He may as well have them. There was emotion in the old man's voice, but he cleared his throat. I don't know how to thank you, said Ingrid. No need for thanks. It's just being a good neighbor. Take your dog home and don't mention any of this. I'll write to your brother. I'm surprised I didn't think of it earlier. Mr. Hardcastle kept his word. The following Monday, a large package arrived for Athelstane, with a note offering the loan of books and a microscope for his medical studies. These are exactly what I needed, exclaimed Athelstane. He's a real good guy. I wonder why he did it. But the family couldn't answer that question. Only Ingrid and Derry knew the secret, and Ingrid was at school, while Derry, being a dog, couldn't explain. When the family gathered again next weekend, Athelstane's worries were gone, but there was still tension around Egbert. The atmosphere at home felt uneasy and conversation was awkward at meals. Nobody talked about why. It wasn't usual for Ingrid to share family problems, but feeling emotional, she told Mr. Hardcastle about Athelstane's need for books and how she was trying to help. He listened quietly, then said kindly, My dear, you don't have to sell your dog. I can lend your brother all the medical books he needs. On Sunday afternoon, Father looks upset. Mother seems very worried. Egbert is sulking. Queenie won't talk, and Athelstane and Hereward don't seem to know or care what's wrong, but it's making them all grumpy. What am I supposed to do with this family? Thought Ingrid. It had been raining, so they couldn't go for their usual walk on the moors after church. With 7 people cramped in a small house, they kept getting in each other's way. Father was napping in the dining room. Mother, Athelstane, and Hereward were in the drawing room, reading and interrupting each other. Ingrid, annoyed at being disturbed while reading The Scarlet Pimpernel by her family's chatter, tried to escape to her bedroom. But the blind was drawn and Quinread, with a headache, was trying to rest. There was nowhere comfortable to go, so Ingrid put on her coat, took her book, and went to sit in the cycle shed. Even in the rain, being outside was nice. Flowers were starting to bloom, birds were singing, and the garden smelled fresh and sweet. Ingrid took a deep breath and started singing "Thank God for a Garden," a song her mother loved. But standing in the rain admiring the flowers wasn't practical, so Ingrid dashed to the cycle shed for shelter. She hoped for solitude, but Egbert was already there, looking gloomy as ever, fixing his motorbike. He greeted Ingrid with a sigh, then opened up to her. "Ingrid, I can't take this anymore. I miss being in the army. I'm seriously thinking of quitting everything and enlisting again." "Is it really that bad?" asked Ingrid. "Yes, I'm so tired of everything. If it wasn't for Mom, I would have left already. Maybe she'll miss me, but I don't think anyone else will, and I don't care." "What about Miss Bertrand?" Ingrid asked, feeling mischievous. Egbert stopped working and looked at her with the most surprised expression. "How do you know about Miss Bertrand?" he asked. Ingrid couldn't help but laugh. She felt like she had him trapped. "I know more than you think." "Who went into the Abbey church and sat in a pew for a long time, looking all lovey-dovey." "Oh yes, I saw you, and it was quite a sight," she teased. Egbert stared at her, shocked. But, where were you?" he asked. "I was peeking through a hole. I could see right into the church, and I watched you come in. I've been waiting to tell you this," Ingrid said, bursting with laughter. Egbert took a deep breath, trying to process it all. "If only I had known earlier," he said slowly. "Ingrid, please stop laughing. You don't understand. Can you go and tell Dad that you saw me there and remember the exact day and time?" "But isn't Dad the last person you'd want to know?" asked Ingrid, getting serious. "No, he's the one who needs to hear it from a reliable witness he trusts." "Let me explain," he said, noticing Ingrid's surprised expression. "I got myself into trouble. I left the office one afternoon and went to the Abbey, like you saw. When I returned, someone had taken money from Dad's room, and he accused me." "Why you?" Ingrid asked, feeling indignant. "Because I was the only one who could get into his room. I told Dad I had been out, but none of the other workers saw me leave or come back. I went out before Dad left and returned after he came back, but he didn't believe me. You know how he gets when he's angry. And you made it worse by mentioning our tea outing, making it seem like I spent stolen money." "You did have a lot of money that day," remarked Ingrid. "Yes, I had sold a story to a newspaper. It's not great, so I didn't use my name. I didn't want to tell them at home until I wrote something better. I cashed the check and decided to treat you. But explaining to Dad was pointless. Mom defended me, but it's been tough these past 2 weeks." "But, Egbert," said Ingrid, looking puzzled, "couldn't you have asked Miss Bertrand to tell Dad where you were? It would have been better than letting him think you took the money." Egbert's face turned dark again. "I wouldn't ask Miss Bertrand for help, even if I were accused of murder. I'd rather be punished first. I saw her the day after we were at the Abbey together. She was walking with some airmen, and she ignored me. I'm done with girls. They're all the same. And the gloomy young man started working on the motorcycle. Ingrid sympathized. She didn't have much experience with love, but she thought this one wasn't serious. You'll move on, she comforted. And she wasn't nice anyway. Queenie always hated her. If Dad's awake, I'll tell him I saw you in the Abbey. It was a Tuesday, because I had my music lesson and was carrying Dr. Linton's books. Good. That's proving I was somewhere else. I don't know who took the money, but as long as Dad knows I didn't, that's all I care. He can sort it out with the clerks now. Mr. Saxon asked Ingrid questions but believed her, which relieved his doubts about Egbert. The family felt relieved. Mother was happy, and it felt like the storm had passed. Tea was the most relaxed meal they had in 2 weeks. I haven't spent all the money from the Harlow Weekly News yet, Egbert whispered to Ingrid later, and I'll buy you chocolates on Monday. I'll leave them at the hostel. You deserve them. You're a lucky charm. I was going to tease you about the Abbey incident, but I won't say no to chocolates. We'll have a great feast in number 2 tomorrow night.